between two of the planet's busiest continents, an ocean breathes. And it's a world of impossible color and extraordinary life. A place of crushing pressure and glowing light, of frozen kingdoms and sun-drenched reefs. This is the Atlantic. It's a vast, churning engine for the global climate, and it's home to a staggering diversity of life. Most of us will only ever see its surface, a great sheet of blue and gray. But under the waves, down in the twilight and the abyss, lies a hidden majesty. It's an alien world, teeming with creatures that defy imagination. A world we're only just beginning to understand, and one that we're losing faster than we can explore. There are more living things in the deep Atlantic than we can really wrap our heads around. Scientists have tried to put numbers on it, but the estimates get so big they become almost meaningless. Take just one family of fish, the Gonostomatidae, or bristlemouths. They're small, they're unassuming, and they live in the perpetual twilight of the deep ocean. Based on what they can pull up in nets and detect with sonar, biologists figure there are hundreds of trillions of them. They are, by some counts, one of the most numerous vertebrate groups on the entire planet. An almost infinite city of silent, flickering life, holding the whole deep-sea food web on its slender shoulders. This is the scale of life in the Atlantic. Not just in numbers, but in variety, in strangeness, and in wonder. It's a world we can't afford to lose. To understand the why of the Pacific's diversity, we have to look past the water and down to the very foundation of the Earth itself. The Pacific Basin is defined by one of the most powerful and volatile geological features on our planet, the Ring of Fire. This isn't a single place, but a vast, horseshoe-shaped perimeter of seismic activity, stretching for 40. This is where the colossal plates of Earth's crust grind against one another. The massive Pacific Plate is in a constant, slow-motion collision with its continental neighbors. It's a process called subduction, where the dense oceanic crust is forced to dive beneath the lighter continental crust. This process is anything but gentle. It's a world-shaping force that builds mountains, triggers earthquakes, and, most importantly for our story, fuels. This relentless tectonic activity is the first great engine of Pacific biodiversity. It's a geological forge, constantly creating new and complex habitats on the seafloor where none existed before. As the crust stretches and tears, magma from the Earth's mantle rises, erupting onto the cold, dark seabed. Over millennia, these eruptions build massive underwater mountains known as seamounts. Thousands of these seamounts litter the Pacific floor, some rising kilometers from the abyss to form solitary peaks. Each seamount is, in effect, an island of hard rock in a vast, muddy desert. The deep ocean floor is mostly a soft, sediment-covered plain, making it tough for many forms of life to get a foothold. But a seamount provides a solid surface. Currents that were once slow and uniform are suddenly disrupted, accelerating as they flow over and around these massive structures. This sweeps the rock clean and carries a constant supply of nutrients and plankton from the waters above. This unique environment becomes an oasis.
Corals, sponges, and other filter feeders anchor themselves to the volcanic rock, creating complex, three-dimensional cities.
These structures, in turn, provide shelter and feeding grounds for a huge variety of fish. Species like armorhead and orange ruffy can form massive gatherings around seamounts, drawing in larger predators. And because many seamounts are so isolated, separated by vast distances of deep, open ocean, they function as evolutionary laboratories. Fish populations that colonize one seamount can become genetically cut off, and over millions of years. But the Ring of Fire creates an even more extreme environment. Hydrothermal vents. Where the seafloor is actively spreading apart, seawater seeps down into the Earth's crust, where it's superheated by magma to temperatures that... This superheated, mineral-rich fluid then erupts back into the ocean, creating towering chimneys that spew. To us, this looks like a vision of hell. The pressure is crushing, there's no sunlight, and the water is a toxic, scalding brew. For decades, scientists believed complex life couldn't exist here. All life, they thought, ultimately depended on the sun.
But the discovery of hydrothermal vents in the Eastern Pacific in the 1970s shattered that idea.
Here, in perpetual darkness, life thrives on a completely different energy source: chemosynthesis. Specialized bacteria have evolved the extraordinary ability to metabolize the toxic sulfur compounds it rents. These bacteria form the base of a food web that is entirely independent of the sun. And wherever there's a food source, fish have adapted to exploit it. In the Eastern Pacific, one of the most conspicuous predators in many vent communities is the pink vent fish, Thermarces cerberus. This eel-like fish moves among the shimmering heat and giant tube worms, feeding on crabs and other small animals. We also find remarkable fish like the viviparous brotulas, such as Thermicthus holocyi, which can be a dominant predator. These fish aren't just visitors, they are true residents of the abyss, showing incredible adaptations to the pressure flows. The tectonic forces of the Ring of Fire, therefore, do more than just shake the land. They build the very architecture of the deep Pacific. They create a rugged, complex, and varied seafloor, driving the evolution of new species. And in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean, this same geological power lights a chemical fire, fueling the first, and perhaps most fundamental, reason the Pacific is a planetary hotspot for life. From the abyss, let's travel to the poles, where the Atlantic becomes a realm of ice and freezing water. Here, survival is a constant fight against the cold. Down south, where the Atlantic mixes with the Southern Ocean around Antarctica, the water is a lethal -1.8 degrees Celsius. Salt keeps it from turning solid, but for any normal fish, it should mean instant death as ice crystals form in their blood. Yet, here live the notothenioids, a group of fish that have pulled off the seemingly impossible. For millions of years, they've evolved in isolation, developing a superpower. They have biological antifreeze in their veins. These are special glycoprotein molecules that don't just lower the freezing point of their blood. They actively patrol the bloodstream, grabbing onto any microscopic ice crystals that start to form and stopping them from growing. This incredible adaptation has allowed them to colonize a world of ice. Fish like the black rock cod and the emerald rock cod, common names for these unique notothenioids, which are not related to true. Lurking in the deeper, frigid waters is one of the Southern Ocean's top predators, the Antarctic toothfish. Estimates. A colossal member of the notothenoid group, it can grow over 2 meters long and live for 50 years. It is a crucial predator that helps structure the entire ecosystem. Now, travel thousands of kilometers north to the other end of the Atlantic, to the Arctic. Here too, life is defined by ice. At the heart of this ecosystem is the polar cod. This small, silver fish isn't just another species, it's the linchpin. It lives its life tied to the sea ice, using the complex, brine-filled channels on its underside as a nursery for its young and a refuge from predators. Whales, seals, seabirds, and larger fish like Greenland halibut all heavily depend on this one species. The polar cod is the conduit through which the energy of the Arctic flows, from tiny plankton all the way to the polar bear. But this frozen kingdom is changing. Warmer Atlantic waters are pushing north. And with them comes another cod, the Atlantic cod. A larger, more adaptable generalist competitor, it's now a regular visitor, and in some places, a new resident. Two worlds, once separated by a wall of cold, are starting to collide. Leaving the ice, we journey to the warm, clear, sun-drenched waters of the tropical and subtropical Atlantic. Here, life explodes in a riot of color and form. The Caribbean reefs are famous, but there's another, less-known cradle of diversity on the other side of the ocean. The coastal waters of Brazil, in the southwestern Atlantic, are now recognized as a major global hotspot for marine life. This region is home to an estimated 405 resident reef fish species, and what makes it truly special is its uniqueness. Because it's relatively isolated from the Caribbean by the massive outflows of the Amazon and Orinoco rivers, life here has evolved on its own path. About 27% of its reef fish are endemic, meaning they are found nowhere else on Earth. It's a factory for new species. Schools of brilliant yellow-tailed snapper flow like rivers over the reefs. Intricately patterned groupers, from the family Serranidae, patrol their territories with stoic confidence. Sleek, powerful jacks from the family Carangidae hunt in packs in the blue water just off the reef's edge. This vibrant, complex world is a delicate dance, a living architecture built by corals and But diversity isn't just on the glamorous coral reefs. Much of the Atlantic's continental shelf is a world of subtler, but no less critical, habitats. Huge stretches of the seabed are made of hard bottoms, rocky reefs, gravel beds, and even man-made structures like shipwrecks and pipelines. These structures are the nurseries and spawning grounds for some of the most important fish in the ocean. Atlantic herring, for example, depend on specific types of ground to lay their eggs. While it can vary by region, gravel beds and rocky outcrops are often prime real estate, giving their eggs the clean, oxygenated surfaces they need. The loss of these habitats can have a devastating impact on the future of specific herring populations.
And then there's the Atlantic cod.
For centuries, this was the fish of the North Atlantic, the one that built economies and fed nations. Studies consistently show that cod biomass and spawning success are much higher in areas with complex, hard-bottom habitats. These rocky landscapes provide shelter and ideal conditions for spawning. From the deep abyss to the frozen poles, from vibrant reefs to humble cobblestone beds, the Atlantic is not one thing. It's a mosaic of interconnected worlds, each with its own unique cast of characters, each vital to the health of the whole. Leaving the ice, we journey to the warm, clear, sun-drenched waters of the tropical and subtropical Atlantic. Here, life explodes in a riot of color and form. The Caribbean reefs are famous, but there's another, less-known cradle of diversity on the other side of the ocean. The coastal waters of Brazil, in the southwestern Atlantic, are now recognized as a major global hotspot for marine life. This region is home to an estimated 405 resident reef fish species, and what makes it truly special is its uniqueness. Because it's relatively isolated from the Caribbean by the massive outflows of the Amazon and Orinoco rivers, life here has evolved on its own path. About 27% of its reef fish are endemic, meaning they are found nowhere else on Earth. It's a factory for new species. Schools of brilliant yellow-tailed snapper flow like rivers over the reefs. Intricately patterned groupers, from the family Serranidae, patrol their territories with stoic confidence. Sleek, powerful jacks from the family Carangidae hunt in packs in the blue water just off the reef's edge. This vibrant, complex world is a delicate dance, a living architecture built by corals and populated by an explosion of evolution.
But diversity isn't just on the glamorous coral reefs.
Much of the Atlantic's continental shelf is a world of subtler, but no less critical, habitats. Huge stretches of the seabed are made of hard bottoms, rocky reefs, gravel beds, and even man-made structures like shipwrecks and pipelines. These structures are the nurseries and spawning grounds for some of the most important fish in the ocean. Atlantic herring, for example, depend on specific types of ground to lay their eggs. While it can vary by region, gravel beds and rocky outcrops are often prime real estate, giving their eggs the loss of these habitats can have a devastating impact on the future of specific herring populations.
And then there's the Atlantic cod.
For centuries, this was the fish of the North Atlantic, the one that built economies and fed nations. Studies consistently show that cod biomass and spawning success are much higher in areas with complex, hard-bottom habitat. These rocky landscapes provide shelter and ideal conditions for spawning. From the deep abyss to the frozen poles, from vibrant reefs to humble cobblestone beds, the Atlantic is not one thing. It's a mosaic of interconnected worlds, each with its own unique cast of characters, each vital to the health of the whole. For generations, the story of Atlantic cod off the coast of Newfoundland, Canada, was one of impossible abundance. Early explorers claimed they were so thick you could walk across their backs to get ashore. For 500 years, a fishery thrived there, a pillar of culture and economy. The cod were infinite. Until they weren't.
In the mid-20th century, the fishing fleet changed.
Small, local schooners were replaced by massive, industrial factory trawlers. These ships were brutally efficient, armed with sophisticated electronics and nets the size of football fields. The catches soared. Scientists started sounding the alarm in the 1980s, warning that the stock was being fished far beyond its limits.
Their warnings were ignored. drowned out by short-term economic and political pressure.
Then, in the early 1990s, the infinite fish vanished. The population collapsed, in some areas by as much as 99%.
In 1992, the Canadian government had to declare a total moratorium on cod fishing, putting 30,000 people out of work.
The cause wasn't a mystery. It was decades of relentless, industrial overfishing. Simple as that. Environmental shifts, like changing water temperatures, likely added stress to a population already on its knees.
And destructive fishing methods, like bottom trawling, were tearing up the very habitat the Atlantic cod needed to recover.
But the fatal blow came from the nets. Three decades later, the Newfoundland cod still haven't come back. The ecosystem has flipped.
With the main predator gone, species like crab and shrimp have boomed. Atlantic cod, the fish that built a nation, is now the ghost of the Atlantic, a haunting lesson in what happens when we mistake abundance for infinitude.
It's the story that should have changed everything. But it didn't. The tragedy of the Newfoundland cod wasn't a one-off. It was a preview. The nets we use are often indiscriminate. Fishing boats targeting cod inadvertently catch and kill thousands of protected harbor porpoises.
Long lines and gill nets entangle sharks, skates, and rays, many of which are already facing extinction. The OSPAR Commission, which monitors the Northeast Atlantic, currently lists 22 species of fish, including several species of...
Our industrial hunt for a few key commercial fish is inflicting devastating collateral damage across the board. The damage isn't just biological, it's physical. The most destructive fishing method in widespread use today is bottom trawling. It involves dragging enormous, weighted nets across the seafloor to scoop up bottom-dwelling fish.
In its path, the gear plows through the seabed, flattening, scouring, and destroying everything it touches.
Imagine clear-cutting an old-growth forest just to catch a few kinds of birds.
That's the ecological equivalent. It obliterates the very structure of life on the seafloor. Ancient, slow-growing coral gardens and sponge beds, which are critical nurseries and refuges, are reduced to rubble in moments. The complex, three-dimensional world of rocky reefs is bulldozed into a barren, featureless plain.
This is not a temporary disturbance.
In many fragile, deep-sea environments, the damage is effectively permanent on human timescales.
We are erasing the living architecture of the ocean floor. This destruction is mirrored in our coastal zones, the most productive nurseries for the entire ocean. Along the Atlantic coast of North America, vast meadows of seagrass are in steep decline.
These beds are critical habitat for juvenile fish, crabs, and countless other species. They're being choked out by sediment runoff from development and agriculture, which clouds the water and blocks the sun. They're being physically torn up by dredging and shaded out by new docks and aquaculture facilities.
Our very presence on the coast is re-engineering the ocean's edge.
Jetties and seawalls, built to protect property, disrupt the natural flow of sand. This starves barrier islands of the material they need to survive, causing them to shrink and weaken. As they erode, the vital salt marshes and wetlands they protect are lost, and with them, the nurseries for dozens of... We are systematically dismantling the ocean's cradles, one habitat at a time. Beyond the nets and the bulldozers, a more insidious threat is changing the very chemistry of the Atlantic, our climate. As our atmosphere warms, the ocean is absorbing the vast majority of that extra heat.
This warming isn't uniform.
It's forcing a great biological reorganization across the entire basin. We see it in the northward march of tropical and subtropical species.
Tuna are now a more common sight further north.
On the other side of the Atlantic, species are also shifting their ranges. This isn't just enrichment, it's an invasion. As warmer water species push poleward, they bring new competition and new diseases, putting immense pressure on the cold water specialists that have nowhere left to go. In the Arctic, the arrival of the larger Atlantic cod poses a complex and growing threat to the native polar cod. As sea ice disappears, the polar cod is losing its main refuge and nursery, while simultaneously facing a new competitor. This isn't a simple replacement. It's a slow-motion ecological squeeze. In the Antarctic, the effects are just as stark. Marine heat waves are disrupting the finely tuned reproductive cycles of endemic fish, threatening their ability to spawn successfully. The antifreeze in their veins can't protect them from an environment that's just becoming too warm, too fast. Alongside the heat, the ocean is absorbing a quarter of the carbon dioxide we pump into the atmosphere. This is fundamentally changing its chemistry, making it more acidic.
Ocean acidification is a silent crisis.
It makes it harder for organisms like corals and clams to build their shells.
But it also affects fish directly, interfering with their sense of smell, their ability to detect predators, and even their behavior. At the same time, as the ocean warms, it holds less dissolved oxygen. Combined with nutrient runoff from land, this is creating and expanding vast oxygen minimum zones, areas where oxygen is too low for many species to survive.
These zones are forcing fish and other organisms to abandon huge swaths of their historical habitat.
We're not just overfishing the Atlantic, we're turning up the heat, removing the oxygen, and dissolving the very building blocks of life.
We're pushing the entire system towards a breaking point. For decades, we've managed the ocean with a kind of tunnel vision.
We drew a box around a single species, cod or mackerel, and tried to calculate the maximum number we could catch without crashing the stock.
This is single species management.
And as the story of the Newfoundland cod proves, it's a catastrophic failure.
It ignores a fundamental truth. No fish is an island. A fish stock doesn't exist in a vacuum. It depends on its habitat, its prey, and the health of the entire ecosystem around it.
There's a better way.
It's called ecosystem-based fisheries management, or EBFM. It's a radical shift in perspective.
Instead of asking, how much can we take, it asks, what must we leave behind to keep the whole system healthy? EBFM looks at the whole picture.
It considers the food web, making sure enough forage fish like herring are left for the whales and seabirds. It protects critical habitats, recognizing that you can't have healthy cod without healthy spawning grounds.
It accounts for climate change, understanding that a warming ocean will change where fish live and how many there are.
In the United States, federal fisheries in places like Alaska are managed with a more holistic approach that uses many of these principles. It's not a perfect system, but it moves beyond simplistic quotas by setting hard limits on bycatch and considering broader ecosystem health.
This approach acknowledges that the value of the ocean isn't just in the fish we pull out, but in the intricate, functioning system we leave behind.
Shifting the entire Atlantic, with its complex web of international politics, to this model is a monumental task.
But it's the only path to a future with both healthy oceans and healthy fisheries. It means we have to stop seeing the ocean as a warehouse and start seeing it as a living system.
Alongside a new way of managing what we take, we have to embrace a new urgency in protecting what's left.
The most powerful tool we have to let the ocean heal itself is creating marine protected areas, or MPAs.
These are designated areas where destructive activities are limited or, in the best cases, completely banned.
They are sanctuaries for the sea.
And they work.
Look at the Isle of Arran in Scotland.
In the 1980s, local divers witnessed the complete devastation of their coastal seabed by scallop dredgers and bottom trawlers. After a 13-year grassroots campaign, Scotland's first no-take zone was established in Lamlash Bay in 2008.
The results have been stunning.
Studies have documented a dramatic recovery of life inside.
One 2019 study highlighted a more than threefold increase in king scallop density in the no-take zone since 2013.
Biodiversity is returning.
The ecosystem is healing itself. These protected areas aren't just preserving what's left, they're generating new life that can then spill over into surrounding waters, benefiting local, sustainable fisheries.
This model is being scaled up.
In 2024, the government of the Azores, a Portuguese archipelago in the middle of the Atlantic, passed a
The network covers 287,000 square kilometers, an area bigger than the UK, and protects 30% of the waters around the islands. Crucially, half of this area is fully protected in no-take zones, creating a vast sanctuary for the region's.
These successes are inspiring, but the global picture shows how far we still have to go.
As of early 2026, data indicates that more than 10% of the world's ocean is now under some form of protection.
That sounds good, but the number masks a sobering reality. The level of protection varies wildly.
According to the Marine Protection Atlas, which analyzes the quality of that protection, as of March 2026, we're protecting a lot of ocean on paper, but only a tiny fraction of it is getting the real protection it needs to recover. And on the high seas, the vast international waters that make up 2/3 of the world's oceans, the protected area is less than 2%. To hit the global goal of protecting 30% of our oceans by 2030, we have to do more than draw lines on a map. We have to make sure those lines mean something.
The fate of the Atlantic is not sealed.
The science is clear on what went wrong, and it's also clear on what we have to do to fix it. The ocean is not a lost cause. Its resilience is remarkable.
When we give it a chance, when we remove the intense pressures we put on it, it starts to heal.
The recovery inside MPAs is proof of that. The challenge is huge, but it's not impossible.
And it's a challenge that belongs to all of us.
The future of the Atlantic's breathtaking diversity will be decided in this decade. It will be decided in government halls, where politicians must choose to follow scientific advice over short-term political gain.
It will be decided in international forums, where nations must cooperate to protect the high seas, that vast global commons that belongs to everyone and no one.
But it will also be decided by us.
As consumers, we can create demand for a better way.
We can make informed choices about the seafood we eat, using guides from conservation organizations to support fisheries that are managed sustainably. We can demand to know where our fish comes from and how it was caught.
We can also use our voices.
We can support the organizations on the front lines, the scientists, advocates, and community leaders fighting for ecosystem-based management and real marine protection.
We can demand that our leaders take the 30 by 30 commitment seriously, to not just meet the target on paper, but to...
Between two continents, an ocean breathes. For centuries, we took from it, believing its bounty was limitless. We now know the devastating truth of that mistake. But we also know the path forward.
It's a path of respect, of precaution, and of hope. The Atlantic's hidden jewels, its deep-sea wonders, its frozen kingdoms, and its sunlit reefs are not yet lost.
They are a treasure worth fighting for. The tide can be turned.
But we have to turn it together, and we have to start now.